Hello. Thank you for taking your time to stop, look, and listen in our divine appointment here tonight. I'm Sandra, and I am ever so excited because I am here tonight with the one, the only Victoria Wilson, and we're live tonight on another 1 full hour of Calling All Angels Hotline. That's right here, right now. So glad that you could come out tonight, Victoria.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here.
Isn't this fun?
I'm excited.
Just to come here and step in and just be living fully and completely from your heart and sharing it all.
And let's see what happens.
See what happens. We better explain what that means to our viewers out there. See what happens. For those who don't know.
Who don't know what happens?
Yeah.
Well, I am a mind-body-spirit counselor. I have been in private practice for 24 years. I have an office here in Fort Wayne and another office in Cincinnati. And it's my job to help people connect into their deeper wisdom and the deeper spiritual part of their being.
Now that's something relatively bursting all across the world.
Yeah, it's something that's very large out there now. When I was first starting, not very many people were really working in that particular kind of field. And so it's exciting to me to see mind-body connection in just about any magazine that I pick up, and to know that people are really catching on to that idea that what happens in our interior has a profound effect on our exterior world.
Exactly. And that right from the start, all I can think about is oneness. Mm-hmm. And where that is taking us, where what you're doing is taking us in our world. Mm-hmm. Would you describe some of that for our audience tonight?
Well, I think that at the very deepest level, we're all one being. And one of our biggest woundings in physical form is that we have forgotten that. Or maybe we need to learn that for the first time. Who knows exactly how that works. But that the more we don't recognize others as self, the more conflict we end up with in life. So when I think of people spiritually awakening, I'm really thinking of them as expanding their capacity to recognize other as self.
That's soul deep, soul wide, the soul of the universe.
Yeah.
What is your background?
I'm a human.
Yes, you are.
A mammal.
Yes, you are.
I had a lot of different winding adventures on the way to doing what I'm doing. It started as a near-death experience several months before I turned 15 years old, and ended up moving into my mid-20s, finding a spiritual teacher who taught me how to do what I do. And I went on to get a degree, a master's in metaphysical philosophy, and I'm currently working on my PhD right now.
Goodness, that's like an elevator speech.
You know, I had what I think of as interior degrees before I ever had exterior degrees. So I had degrees from spirit. So my spiritual adventures are really what brought me to the place of really wanting to teach and work with people.
Well, I know that there are people out there who are tuned in and who are connected to the show tonight who may not be watching, but for those of you who have just turned on this live Calling All Angels hotline, the number for you to call in tonight is 422-3902. We'd love to hear from the audience.
Absolutely. Questions, comments?
Yes, yes. Their growth experience, a short testimony of their growth. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to you talking about your interior. Mm-hmm. You know it so well. When I say you know it so well, you can, it's almost like you can still identify with all those steps that you went through.
Probably because I spend so much time working with people one-on-one. This is what I do for a full-time living, as I do counseling with people. So I'm very involved in the steps on the journey on a daily basis as I'm walking people along their path. I heard a definition of counseling one time, and I think it's fabulous, and that is a good counselor holds your hand while you learn to tell the truth about yourself. And from my perspective, a big part of that is holding people's hand while they learn to tell the radiant truth about themselves. So rather than working in a therapeutic sense where we're looking at all of the ways that people may have pathology or problems, we're really looking at what is the soulful truth of their radiant interior that they're having a hard time telling themselves, and how can I help them see the fullness of their being.
For instance, what would some of those things be for those out there who just don't have any idea about this type of work?
It's amazing how frequently people apologize for loving themselves or apologize for feeling good about themselves. People will constantly say to me, now I know this sounds egotistical, but I really think I might be good at healing, or I really think I might be creative, or I really think, and it amazes me that we've been raised to believe that to know what you do well is egotistical. From my perspective, if you're going to know where your challenges are, what you need to work on, you darn well better know what's right about you, what your gifts are, what you're strong at, so that you have that balance within yourself of these are the areas that I'm really growing and learning, this is my growing edge, and these are the areas where I skillfully give my gifts to the world. And a big part of what I help people do is to tell the truth on both sides of that. These are the skillful gifts I give to the world.
So in another sense, and I just think of myself in my growth with the evolution of Angels at God's Central Station, I just think of the word ego as something changed, like the eager to go on.
That's lovely.
And that's where the thought shift occurred for me.
You cannot get along in physical form without having an ego. It's the part of you that navigates the river of life. It helps you understand all the rules and boundaries. But if you don't have a strong connection to your interior radiance, you won't have a profound sense of meaning in your life, and you won't feel guided from the inside out. So that becomes
guided from
equally
the inside out. Boy, that's another fascinating find. Describe some of that to our audience.
It can be as simple as gut instinct. It can be as profound as somebody who's able to psychically read other people. It can come forward in a range of ways, but it's really recognizing that we have an interior compass that really helps us know where we are in life. Most people recognize that if they have a pet, that the pet's gonna know if they're coming home or know if you're sad. Why would we think as human beings that we are any less intuitive than our beloved pets? What we have is a very well-developed intellectual self that talks us out of knowing what we know. And so I think to open to one's radiance is also to sit in the middle of what you know to be true, so that you really navigate and use that interior compass to decide what's the best direction for you to move in.
For a long time, they said that women had that compass more than men.
Well, I think because of child rearing, that may be true. It just simply was used more frequently, so it's a muscle that's better developed. But now that men are, rearing children also, now that we have much more equality in how we're separating our duties and our chores, I see just as many men developing that aspect of themselves because they're using it more as women. But I think historically women had it more, just simply because they used it more in child rearing.
That's creating a big change and a big difference in our world.
Absolutely. To actually be able to see men that are nurturing, loving, comforting, to see women that are visionary, directed leaders, and to know that we have both sides of our nature, that every man has a feminine aspect to him and every woman has a masculine aspect to her, and that's part of our wholeness, is embracing that also.
Well, when we talk about that interior map, it's different than leadership. It's different than the leadership that we were that I was historically raised with. When I first looked at leadership, it was about paying attention to somebody who's done something the same as that I'm doing. And the interior radiance leadership is totally inner guided.
Absolutely. I think that you can have a very healthy leadership from the ego. There's nothing wrong with that. But human beings have many layers within themselves that they can choose to navigate from. And to navigate from your deeper radiance means that you really are accepting that you are an aspect of all there is, and that your actions in the world count. I don't know how many times I see spiritual people that don't stop to think that something as simple as road rage could be affecting the energetic climate of their environment, when it actually does. You know, as we're really working to bring forward the best within ourselves, it's important to do that in all the smallest ways in our life, to do it when you think nobody's watching. To do it because you have a sense of the interior environment that you're creating for yourself. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking about driving over here tonight, and I was thinking about someone who kind of got lost.
That would be me. That would be me. When I went to pick you up and I drove back and forth, and I finally said, wait a minute, Spirit, show me what I'm doing wrong. And immediately the awareness came to me of why I wasn't able to find your house, exactly what I was doing wrong. Now, what I thought was funny was that it took me, 4 tries before I finally surrendered. And isn't that the way a lot of us do, is that we go to Spirit as a last-ditch effort, rather than maybe what we're moving toward is maybe that's the first place that we go, is to begin to open up and check with that interior radiance that is connected to all other beings and says, what is today supposed to look like?
When you talk about the interior radiance, identify more of that.
From a Jungian perspective, we might call it the soul. From a Christian perspective, I happen to believe that what we are at the deepest level is too large to be encompassed by one tiny little body, and that we can be absolutely engrossed in the human illusion that we are just a human being and disconnected from everything else. We can be absolutely entranced by that. Or we can wake up and begin to recognize that a human being is just one aspect of what I am. And that at some point when this body drops away, that I will go back to what I was before and what I will be forever after. And so to me, that interior radiance is really about recognizing a deeper identity.
That's deep. That's deep. And when the word just is used in its context, it so limits everything in understanding and development and growth and so much.
Well, when we recognize ourselves as something more and having a human adventure, it leaves us a lot of freedom and leeway to gracefully close areas of our life and grow beyond them. Whereas if all you think you are is a human being, I think we have a lot of fear about the cycles of life coming and going, and we hang on to the areas that the collective treasures, and we tend to keep at bay the things that we are afraid of if we think that we're going to be losing something important to us. So the more I identify with myself as a soul, the more relaxed I become inside my human adventure.
Just using the word soul is relaxing.
Yeah.
That's the other. That's part of my weekly show, Angels Talk, Soul Relationship.
There we go.
Totally gifted by Spirit.
That's lovely. And I think that's really the spiritual adventure for people, is identifying more and more with that soul aspect of themselves, recognizing very lovingly and tenderly that the ego is important, but not overly identifying with it, so that you can have a sense of humor about your own humanness.
I'd like you to invite our audience out there to call us
Oh,
in
we
your
would
own way.
we would love to have you call in. We're open to anything that you would like to talk about. I'd love to answer any questions or have you share about your own spiritual adventure.
What are some of the common questions that you do get in counseling? What are some of the common
A lot of times,
challenges?
people will come in wanting to know how to heal their wounded sense of self-esteem. You know, if they don't have enough self-respect, because you cannot develop your intuition without having self-respect. It's not possible. Because without self-respect, you will not listen to your intuition, and you cannot exercise what you will not acknowledge. So people will come in wanting to know that. People will come in wanting to know what stands between them and bringing forward a deeper gift into the world. Sometimes when people are newer to my work, they come in and they want a psychic reading, and I don't do psychic readings. In fact, I get calls about once a month, people wanting that. And
it costs a little more for you to do.
Though I'm very intuitive, I would much rather use my intuitive abilities to help people see what areas of their life they could heal the most from by making the smallest change. So sometimes people come in and they'll tell me that, well, I think I have a problem in this area. And as they're talking and giving me a little history, my intuitive awareness becomes really bright toward another area of their life. And I recognize that, okay, if we work over here a little bit, this whole problem that you're having is going to change. And so to me, that's being able to use my intuition to help their compass maybe get a little bit clearer.
Ultimately, though, it's their self-direction that will
Always.
grow
Always.
the circumstance. And over time.
It takes
Yeah.
time. It's one of the things that, you know, we have a whole lifetime for a reason, because it takes a whole lifetime to get to where you're going. And so there is not an instant awakening. Every challenge that we have prepares us for the next level of our own manifestation. So as I'm working through an issue, as I'm resolving it, I'm developing the skills that I need to give my gift to the world. And so all the issues that we have, all of the family problems that we're born into, resolving them actually allows us to become who we always wanted to be in the first place.
As a family.
Yeah. I think of them as sacred woundings. They're sacred initiations. They're difficult, they're painful, but resolving them transforms us.
Transformation.
Absolutely.
In the company of spirit all the time.
Yeah.
You know, we hear that word, we hear that phrase so often, all the time. God is good all the time. I understand it all the time. This is what this is about. It's being, to me, that interaction going on and being totally responsive to it.
It's being in relationship to spirit, the same way you'd be in relationship to another beloved in your life. Because the sacred union within self that many people on their spiritual journey have come across that term, the sacred union, really isn't about just a union between two people. It is the union between the human self and the soul. Because the energy inside us is really wanting to go in two directions. One is upward, to have the ascension mystery, to meet the sacred. But there's the descension mystery. There is the soul self wanting to manifest in form. So the place where those two meet is a place of absolute unconditional love. So to be in relationship to the deeper soul self and recognize that to the soul self, the human self is the beloved. It is the beloved. So people are so afraid of not learning their lessons or of doing the wrong thing or creating karma for themselves, not recognizing that the deepest relationship we have is based on love. Everything else is just varying degrees of confusion.
I just have to think about, I think about fear, because of the fear that has been around me, and fear-based, so much of, I don't even know where to go with this. There's a lot of fear-based things out there.
I think there's a lot of fear energy. If we think about emotions, feelings, perceptions as being a pattern of energy, there's a lot of fear energy, I would say, around the planet itself. And that that fear becomes like a pair of glasses that you put on. They're lenses that you look through. And if you look at the world through those lenses of fear, what you're going to see is all the ways that the human self is really vulnerable, and all the ways that the human self can be hurt or destroyed. Whereas if you are identifying with the radiant soul self,
Radiant soul.
that part cannot be destroyed. It cannot be destroyed. Are there lots of things to be afraid of to the human self? Absolutely, because ultimately the human self is going to die. That's the process it's going to go through. And the only part of us that will cease to exist is the ego. It will have done its job, ceases to exist, and all else moves on. And as long as we are thinking of fear as the greatest reality, we're going to have an unhappy life.
And as long as we're thinking about the love as the greatest reality, and this is from the radiance, then it can only be love.
So
it can only see love.
Yeah, a great question would be, when one is feeling fear, the question I ask myself is, what is it that's causing me to contract where I'm not connected to love? Why am I wanting to be contracted?
I almost want to write that down. I brought my little
there we
notebook
go.
here tonight from the last time we were together.
There we go.
What is that again? What is it that causes me to
Contract.
Yeah.
Why am I not being in an expansive state where love is flowing? When I am contracted, I move into a very, very tiny awareness of who I am as a fragile, vulnerable human being, versus when I'm expanded and am really relaxed into having a human adventure that at some point will end.
As soon as you shift, as soon as I shift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Make that holy shift within myself.
Yeah. So there is a lot of fear in the world, and I have a history of being a childbirth educator. I taught for 9 years at a local hospital and worked with a little over 1,300 couples over those 9 years.
Oh.
And I really look at the spiritual awakening process as being really similar to labor and birth, in that there comes a time when you really wonder if you're going to be okay. And you can do one of two things. You can either go into fear and try and fight the process.
That's right.
And the process is going to happen anyway, whether you're fighting it or not. It's just going to make it a whole lot harder. Or you can surrender into something larger than yourself that knows what it's doing. That knows what it's doing. And one of the things that might comfort people to know is that during a birth process or a death process, how many angelic presences are there in the room with the person going through the process. That there is so much loving support, that there is so much energy being directed at the person who's being initiated, whether it's a birth or a death, that we really can surrender into the process. We really can trust it.
It makes me think that there's so much angelic presence in an individual when they are also in the process of the shift,
Absolutely.
So that, so it happens all the time.
Yeah. At any given moment, we can use our free will to make the decision to open and surrender to love, or to contract and become small and to have a relationship with fear. Any given moment, any breath we take can be centered around that particular perception, which one we're choosing to tune into.
I think of that song, Every Step I Take.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Sting, absolutely.
Sting, every
Was it
breath
Sting, or was he
I
still
make?
with Police then?
I'm unsure. All I know is that the heavenly angels are bringing forth that song right now to gently remind us that, it is in the music, in the art, and the movies, and in our language.
Yeah, free will is a powerful thing. And people become entranced in believing that the perception they're having is the only reality, rather than the perception that they're having at any given moment is just one perspective. We can't always change at the moment what's happening in the outer world, especially if the world is playing out a much, much larger blueprint. But we can choose what perspective we're going to have, how we're going to stand in relationship to an event. Like in watching, people comment to me how hard it is for them to watch the news, particularly people that are energetically open. And I said, well, what would happen if you watched the news from a state of meditation and actually sent loving energy
Yes.
to any of the places that you saw experiencing violence, or the people that you saw that were suffering? What would happen rather than becoming enamored by the fear and despair if you actually took the time that you watched the news as to be a prayerful time? You know, it would change things for people, because what people tend to do is they withdraw from the world when they're that sensitive, rather than recognizing, you know, there's a reason why we're here now, awake now. And if we truly are energy systems, if our thoughts and our perceptions and our prayers count, then they don't just count sometimes, they count all of the time.
From my understanding, that's where those thoughts attract the outcome.
They certainly, I think, can shape forces. I think that there are things going on in the world that were set in motion, you know, thousands, who knows, maybe even millions of years ago. And there are things that need to play out same way that some things need to play out in a person's life. And that there's certain things that maybe we're not meant to change because they need to play out. But that doesn't mean that we can't help alleviate some of the suffering, or that maybe the time period that something's going to play out may be shortened. If there are enough people recognizing the greater truth, the soulful truth, rather than believing that this drama and this play that we're all in is the only reality.
I think there'd be a lot more trust.
I think absolutely.
It would be all based on trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
To me.
Yeah. Because what we've got in the world is over 6 billion people with 6 billion perspectives. And that whole process of awakening is having ever increasing circles of care and concern. As I recognize you as related to me, and at the deepest level as me, how I treat you counts. How I think about you counts. And there stops being an us and a them. And there's just us.
It's all us.
It's just us.
It's all about us.
Absolutely.
It's all about us.
It's about that big us.
I want to gently remind our viewers out there to please call us, 422-3902. If you have that urgency to call us, for whatever reason, we want to hear from you. You are valuable, and what you have to say is valuable, and you need to be heard.
And you might not realize that you're the one that's being brave enough to ask the question that a lot of other people are having. Sometimes we really, well, not sometimes, let's remove that. We need to remember that we're the answer to each other's prayers. We need to remember that. And that when we take action based on an intuition, we're answering something prayerful coming from someplace.
The source.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of my car in Indianapolis. When it didn't start, I immediately took 5 minutes and said, okay, source, show me, like you did with the direction. And before I knew it, within the hour, there was a maintenance man, there was an airline pilot, there was a technician that had it on a diagnostic. I mean, there were people on the phone calling me. There was a gentleman from Nashville, Tennessee, calling to just see how I was doing.
You know, people want to help. People really do want to be of service. But if we are in relationship to fear, then we're vibrating at a fear level, and it doesn't feel good to anybody to be around us. People actually shy away from that because they've got enough of their own fear to deal with. But if you're vibrating at a level of unconditional love and trust, you feel good to be around, and people will seek you out, and people will want to be of assistance to you. It's just that simple. You know, so being attuned to love doesn't mean that you don't have adventures. It doesn't mean your car doesn't break down. It doesn't mean you don't get lost.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that. It means that you find the solutions.
Always.
It means that you're in the middle of the adventure and you end up engaging the other souls. They're going to share that adventure with you.
Interesting how the word solution is solution.
Yeah, that is lovely, isn't it?
It is. It is. It works. It works. Then life works for me. But to think about all of this, the loving support that God, the universe, our Creator, gives us instantly, constantly, abundantly. It is breathtaking. It is breathtaking.
I think people can get really lost in arguing with the universe about what's happening to them and why, as if the problem's been delivered to the wrong doorstep. And instead, it's not a matter of saying, why me? Or what is it that I'm supposed to be learning what am I doing wrong? It's not a matter of that because the universe isn't a reward system. It is a matter of saying, what skills do I need to develop to deal with this challenge that has found me? Because it's developing those skills that are going to turn me into who I want to be. So of course, the way we develop skills is the same way you develop muscle, by being challenged, by having resistance. That's how it works.
The same way. I'm thinking about that here at the #1 TV access station in the nation, in the Allen County Public Library. Every time I come here, I grow and learn. Every time. And there is every reason to stay here and be in the adventure. You never know who you're going to talk to or find information. It's all about love here. It's all about unity.
That's great.
It is. It's exciting. So now I want to share a little bit about some of the retreats.
Oh, great.
We met
At a retreat.
A retreat. It was at Waycross in Indiana. And I was invited to come there specifically to be in your presence. I want you to know that. And
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yes, I was. And I didn't get an opportunity to interview you while we were there, but I knew that our time would come, that you'd be sitting right here, and here it is. But share with our audience a little bit about the retreats and how they manifest it.
That particular retreat, I was blessed with being able to meet the people, the women from Unity Church of Indianapolis the year before, when their facilitator, just 6 weeks before the retreat, had a heart attack. And they were talking to the Unity Church up here in Fort Wayne, and one of the people there who was kind enough to say, you really should get in touch with Victoria Wilson. So they interviewed myself and 2 other people and said, could you possibly take over at this later date? And I said, absolutely, not a problem. And so they decided to go with it, and we had such a marvelous time last year that they asked me to go ahead and do this year. And weekend retreats they're mini pilgrimages. And we have such busy, fast-paced lives that we really don't have much time that's dedicated just to us unless we actually set that time aside. And so to actually have a whole weekend where a person's focus is their own development becomes, I think, really crucial to keep cultivating your own development. In the weekends, we do combinations of meditation and creativity and group sharing and interior exploration and energy work and using nature and all kinds of things to help a person deepen into their own connection with their own soulful self. That's the focus of the whole weekend, is for people to walk away being amazed at who they are. That's what I want people to walk away with, is just absolutely enchanted by their own interior space and excited about their own lives.
I brought something with me tonight. The poster. I call it creative expression. That was made at the women's. It was a women's retreat.
That one was a women's
and
retreat.
If we can pan over there, so we can just take a quick peek at it, because it represents my personal sacred time. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about the quadrants of it.
Yeah, the collage making is a tool that I've been using for probably around 20 years. And this particular one, we use the quadrants that have been designed in integral theory by Ken Wilber. And so the quadrants are really addressing the I, we, it, and its, or my interior sense of self, my relationships, my behavior in the world, and the greater world at large. And so each woman was putting on pictures and words and images that express that awareness with herself. And then she also was putting in something that represents her own shadow material, the side of herself that she's growing on. The thing that's wonderful about using this kind of creativity is that we'll actually access parts of our self that we aren't aware of at an outer level. There are things that you can get through creativity, through movement, through meditation that you can't get any other way. And so to only do your spiritual journey intellectually is to do a great disservice to yourself. You really need to be able to work with yourself in multiple ways. I love the collage making because people can take that home with them. And actually I do a collage for myself at the end of every year, asking to open up to the energies of the next year so that I can see what it is that's waiting for me.
What is the biggest question that is asked about the retreats? What is the most common question that
Am I
someone
going to
asks?
have to share when I don't want to? You know, people are terrified of having to share their interior self, their vulnerability in a large group. And sharing with self through journaling and self-talk is mandatory. Sharing with the group is always a choice. Mm-hmm. And plus with the larger groups, and by larger I mean anything over 10, I always break people up into smaller groups of anything from 3 to 4 people so that you've got your own little clan you're sharing with. This is your group for the week, and this is your spiritual family that you feel safe with and work with. So people have a real fear about that. People also wonder if they need to have previous experience. And whether you've done any previous interior work or not, you're still a radiant soul having an adventure. And people will tend to get what they're ready for. And so a retreat can meet somebody, you know, where they live at a very deep level, but a beginner can also do it.
All I remember is laughter
Yeah.
through the entire weekend, and it was just what heaven ordered for me.
Yeah.
I remember coming in there just laughing and just so free to share. Yeah. It didn't matter. I look at it this way: there are no secrets in the universe. Now that I know how to tap into that radiance. So,
and you know, the first level of healing has always been telling the story. So to finally put words to what's happening in your interior is a real healing for people. And sometimes the healing is around something that feels really broken and wounded. Sometimes the healing is around finally admitting that they really are radiant, that they really are amazing. But to finally put it in words and have it witnessed by other radiant beings who are consciously being a safe place to land, who are consciously holding the energy of being accepting, loving, and open, can really help a person anchor a new awareness about who they are.
definitely. I came home and I added one more thing to my expression. See what it says?
Yes. That's lovely.
It says, I am one, access. Sandra Lynch. Hello. I just love it. And I put it in the center up there. It fell off today when I was bringing it here, but that's
sometimes the collages have that problem. Pieces fall. I actually find it really interesting when something falls off. I ask myself, what and why? Mm-hmm. You know, why is it trying to get my attention right now? Whether it's a word or a picture. You know, it's one of the ways that our deeper interior can speak to us. Most people don't realize that our interior speaks symbolically, and that our dreams, our intuition, the little events that happen to us are really the language of the interior.
And it's a universal language.
Absolutely.
That's what it ends up to be.
Absolutely.
With all of the threads and the pieces and the colors and all of it. Wow, isn't that exciting? So exciting. See, I see our whole world just in big wholeness. I just see it, wholeness.
Well, that's the next wave of consciousness that's moving forward for humanity.
Oh.
Is wholeness, or another way of framing that is integral, is to be integrated. And you find more and more people who are unwilling to compartmentalize their lives. They want to have an integrated life. They want to be able to be their deepest truth wherever they go, whatever they're doing. So that's the wave of spiritual evolutionary energy that's moving through us. It's calling us into our wholeness. It's asking us to be more than we were just a moment ago.
The results can only be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be good for everybody, for the highest good of everybody.
Absolutely.
Everything, everywhere. It can only be good. That's exciting. I mean, I just get revved up on that. There's no ego there. It's all being revved up,
That's
Victoria. And I think of your name and I think, oh, this is Victorious. This is happening, and she's here and she's helping. And tell us when's the next journey that you're going to take?
Well, the next thing we've got going on is a weekend retreat. Is September the 28th, 29th, 30th. It's called What Comes Next, and it will be at Oakwood Retreat Center, which is in Selma, which is close to Muncie, Indiana. Close, yeah. Looking forward to that very much. It's going to be a wonderful retreat. I haven't done a weekend retreat like this in a couple years. I've been concentrating instead on work I was doing with Kim Wilber's Integral Institute, and was on their coaching team and their adjunctive teaching team, and was teaching out at Omega at the Women in Power conference, and doing women's integral spirituality, which was fabulous. This last June, we just took a group to Italy on a Soul Quest trip for 8 days.
Who took the group?
I did.
Okay, because you said we did.
I did. I have a colleague of mine that came and did the trip with me. She's an art history professor. And so she hauled us around to all of the museums and all of the amazing churches and fabulous things there are to see in Tuscany. And then I handled all the interior meditation inner work. So between the two of us, we had this fabulous adventure. And then next year, I will on my own be taking a group to New Mexico for a week-long Soul Quest trips. So far, the Soul Quest trips, I've taken people to Italy, France, the American Southwest 24 times, Brazil, Peru. Peru, we spent 12 days in Peru, and 6 of those days were with the Quieto shaman, the remnants of the Incan people who came down and took us all over to sacred sites and did ceremony with us. It was just really quite amazing. Yeah, it was wonderful.
It's a way of life.
It is. You know, it is. For me, I don't do anything without, in the back of my mind, being open to the question of, am I meant to bring people here? Is this something that I can share? Is this a way that this can be of service to others? And yeah, absolutely, it's a way of life.
And this is co-ed.
Yes, yes. Most of the work that I do these days is co-ed. I'm on the women's teaching team for Integral Institute, and historically, I used to do a lot of women's only work, but at this point in my journey, I do almost all co-ed work.
And what is your overview on the co-ed? Is it singles? Are they married?
Some of everything. On this last trip to Italy, we actually had one couple with us on that trip, and then we had 4 single men and 5 single women along with that couple. So we do have couples that come and do the journey. We have people that are in a relationship, but their partner's not interested in doing that particular level of work. And then we have single people. And the co-ed work is different in that I'm really working to make sure that it's meeting the needs of 2 very, very different perspectives. And what's really growthful about the co-ed work is how much we can learn from each other. 2 of the women that I took on this last trip to Italy expressed a lot of fear and doubt about relationships. Fear and doubt in particular about whether or not men could be trusted. And the men that were on the trip with us were so beautifully, wonderfully connected into our own radiance that their presence was a healing to these women. And that was one of the things they talked about at the end of the trip, was that they didn't know that they could feel so loved and so nurtured by men. They were wonderfully surprised. So it isn't just what I'm teaching that is healing and helpful to people, it's how they treat each other when they're in this deep space that's also a healing presence.
Then they learned to be more acquainted and learn how to find spirit better.
Well, I tell people, I tell them we've got road rules, and the road rules are I expect everyone to behave as a radiant soul. So it means you're respectful of people around you, you're loving, you're supportive, you're honest. You treat others in a way that shows your care and concern. And when I let people know what's expected of them, they behave in that way.
So simple.
It is.
So simple. And you can actually feel the change occurring.
Yeah. It was just wonderful. I have fun on the weekends and on the trips watching people in the middle of profound spiritual intimacy, where they're really revealing to another person who they are. It has nothing to do with sexual intimacy, everything to do with soulful intimacy.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, it's really very, very wonderful to watch.
I feel it right here, right here, right now. It's like, it's so peaceful, so serene, and that's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus the fact
I had
that
to give it away.
That radiant energy inside us draws to us so many adventures. People want to be close to that kind of energy. My husband and I were in New Mexico, I guess it was about 4 years ago, on our own little adventure, and we were staying at a bed and breakfast. And that morning at breakfast, Anthony Hopkins, the actor, came in with his wife. They were on their honeymoon. My husband went to the restroom, and by the time he came back, he was just amazed that he came out, and my chairs turned toward their table, and the three of us are in this deep conversation. And we ended up spending about 2.5 hours that morning, just the four of us talking. And what they were interested in is they had asked if I'd ever been there before, to New Mexico, and I'd said many times, and they wanted to know the interesting places to go to that had energy to them. So we ended up having a 2.5-hour discussion on spirituality and what our experiences were and our adventures were. And that level of radiance and energy just invites people to open up.
And time flies.
It
and
does.
It's like a ball that's rolling.
Yeah.
It just gets the ball rolling.
Yeah. We have a deep need to be seen for who we truly are, and we have a deep need to see the world from those authentic eyes. So to see and be seen, it's very important to us in our spiritual journey.
Yes, and I'm thinking about this beautiful artwork beside me that just had to be seen here tonight. Would you please share your radiance, how this lovely work manifested?
Oh, thank you very much. I adore painting. I started painting about 20 years ago when a neighbor gave me a set of oils that she was going to throw out, a set of oil paints. And she said, would you be interested in having these? And I sat down and did a painting. It was actually pretty decent. I was kind of surprised by it. One of my teachers taught me how to go into a state of meditation and to paint from that state. And I'm a firm believer that whatever we create from a deep soulful state carries that actual energy. It carries a presence to it. And so I think of my paintings as meditation pieces, and they are the kind of things that I see in my interior. This particular one was done after a trip to Canyon de Chelly, which is in Arizona. And I'm very, very drawn to the Anasazi ruins, and very drawn to the Tiwa people who are the descendants of the Anasazi. And when I'm in the American Southwest, there is a part of my soul that just sings, "This is home. This is home." So it's one of the areas of the U.S. that I go to for renewal. So when I travel, I frequently come home and will paint something that expresses the feelings that I had. This particular one has a name. It's called the Shield of Beckoning. And I was working with an interior teacher, an inner teacher, who would come to me in meditation and would talk to me about what I needed to do next. And that is actually her image. And she would be standing in a shawl and she would be looking over her shoulder at me, beckoning me to come on, to come forward. And so I create them almost always as meditation pieces for myself, though occasionally I've had requests to do them for other people. So I have painted for other people, but not nearly as much as I paint for myself.
Did you always have that creativity flowing through you?
No. I think I probably always did, but I didn't know it. I happen to believe that everybody is creative. It's that we have to find our medium. Everyone's creative. It's just finding the medium that really allows you to express what you know on the inside that is beyond words. Mm-hmm. And so for me, painting is for that.
It's fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you for having me bring them in. I'm really delighted to have them here.
Thank you for bringing them.
You're welcome.
I knew it was going to be something spectacular because Spirit guided me to ask. And I said, well, let's just see what's coming on deck tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fabulous. So what else? We have about 5 more minutes here at the #1 public access station in our lovely nation.
Well, how about if we talk just a bit about what people can do to deepen their own self-awareness?
Okay.
One of the most important things that a person can do is to spend a few minutes every day in quiet contemplation, whether it's prayer work, whether it's meditation work, whether it's visualization, even chanting mantras or affirmations, but to actually spend a few minutes in the morning connecting into that interior space and setting your intent for the day. What do you want today's exploration to be about? Doing the same thing at the end of the day, asking the question of what did I learn today and what do I want to do differently tomorrow? Just those 2 things would change how a person lives inside their skin. Just being mindful at those 2 times, the energy that I want to bring into the day, what have I learned today, and what do I want to do differently tomorrow? So I think sometimes people set up too many goals for themselves. They set up, I need to meditate an hour every day, I need to journal, I need to do this, I need to do that. And of course they can't possibly accomplish all that, so they set themselves up for failure, rather than tweaking their life, doing a little something that becomes a permanent way of being, and then adding to that over the weeks and months and years.
In the company of Spirit.
In the company of Spirit.
That's a lifelong retreat, Victoria.
It is, isn't it?
A lifelong retreat. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to another retreat and helping you spread the word, the good news.
Thank you.
About all of your work and all of the growth that you are touching this wonderful planet with. And let's say we have about 3 more minutes left.
Would it be possible to give out a phone number?
Absolutely. I think there'll be, go ahead. Tell me what your number is.
Well, if people would like information on this particular retreat or New Mexico or private sessions, they can just call my office at 260-373-2366, and I'd be glad to send them in the mail, or they can go to my website, which is www.vlwilson.com. Actually, if you just put a search engine out on Victoria Wilson, it'll bring up my website.
It's wonderful, the internet.
Yes, it is.
We were talking about that coming over.
It is. When I first started doing trips with groups in, I think 85 would have been the first one, I had to do everything by mail and phone, and it took so much time to gather all the information. And now it's so much easier being able to use that as a resource. I'm very glad about that. But it's like anything else. We can become so entranced with information, so entranced with stimulation, that we forget to go into that quiet interior.
I just think of it as all good. It's all good awareness out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the idea of cell phones, I was thinking about the idea of cell phones as being symbology when we really look at the mind-body connection and the cells having a mind of their own. The fact that we have the symbology that we all have cell phones, we all have the capacity to connect everywhere. If we would only realize we have that same capacity at an interior level. And the fact that you see people constantly on the cell phone, to me that really is a sign of how much we're looking for connection. We're trying to find that place to plug into, that place that we belong.
It is time to end the show. Before I go, I want to invite everyone to come back again next month because we're going to be visiting with the one and only Bodine Velasco. He's flying from California to be on the show. And we have to thank our audience for showing up tonight.
Thank you very much for having me, for everyone watching. Hopefully you'll bring your radiance out into the world, and we'll all be better because of it.
Well, I usually end the show like this, with the words divine love and holy kisses. I'll call you in. I need your help.
That's a lovely way to do it.
It is time to end the show tonight, and I thank you for taking all of your time to stop, look, and listen in our divine appointment here tonight on a wonderful episode of Calling All Angels Hotline, here with the one, the only one. What did I call that? In the company of spirit, Victoria Wilson. And we're all here to say divine love and holy kisses. See you next time.